Hare Krishna. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Jaya Radha Madhava Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai, Gaura Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Hare Krishna. Whoever is online, we see Francesca. Hare Krishna. Sorry for the delay. We have a little bit of technical difficulties, but Krishna says that by taking shelter of him, one can cross over even the ocean of material existence, but to speak of a little bit of technical difficulties. So that was thanks to Vishnu Guru. We're all set up now. So today we are covering the latter portion of the 28th chapter of the 4th canto, titled Puranjana Becomes a Woman in the Next Life. And I had hoped to get through the rest of the chapter, but there's Prabhupada writes a lot in his purports here, going taking the opportunity to go in depth into a couple of important topics. So since we got kind of a small crew anyway, and Dave Madhav is not here, I'm probably going to be giving class tomorrow and Thursday. I might take a little bit more time with this section. We'll see how it goes. So we'll start with some invocation first. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Om Jnanatanandasya Yanandana Shalakaya Chakshurudhitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So the past couple of days we've been hearing how Puranjani entered the forest with her husband, King Malayadhvaja, who was a great devotee, and performed austerities as the king prepared to leave his body, and then finally he did. He left his body. And so Puranjani was lamenting for her lost husband, and that's where we left off. Oh, no, we left off that she was lamenting and prepared this was text 50, she then prepared a blazing fire with firewood and placed the dead body of her husband upon it. When this was finished, she lamented severely and prepared herself to perish in the fire with her husband. That was the final verse of yesterday's discussion. Now we're picking things back up with text 51. Tatra purvatara kashchit sakha brahmana atmavan Santvayan Valguna Samna Tama Bharudatim Prabho. My dear king, one Brahmana, who was an old friend of King Puranjana, came to that place and began to pacify the queen with sweet words. And you guess who is this old friend? Who's this old friend? Is an allegory. So every character, every person represents somebody. Puranjana is the living entity. In his previous life, he was married to a wife, a queen, who represented his intelligence. Just as a wife, the Sanskrit word for stri means to expand. So when you get married, everything expands. You get a house, you get so many possessions, you have kids, your whole life expands, stri. So similarly, the material intelligence expands the desires of the living entity and his conditioned existence by creating kind of like a whole network of desires, like a web that the living entity gets stuck in. So here, the Brahmana friend is the super soul. It's Krishna. Krishna is our best friend. Bhoktaram Yagyatapasam, Yagyalokam, Sarvaloka Maheshwaram, Suhridam Sarvabhutanam, Yakamam Shanti. Krishna tells Arjuna that one who knows me to be the supreme friend and well-wisher of everyone, the Lord of all planets, and the enjoyer of all sacrifices, he is actually peaceful. He attains peace. So Prabhupada writes in the purport, the appearance of an old friend in the form of a Brahmana is very significant. In his Paramatma feature, Krishna is the old friend of everyone. I'm jumping ahead a bit. Sitting with the living entity as witness, the Lord gives him all chances to enjoy himself materially. But whenever there is an opportunity, the Lord gives good counsel and advises the living entity to try to abandon trying to become happy through material adjustment and instead turn his face toward the Supreme Personality of Godhead and surrender unto him. So as the super soul, the Lord gives permission and ability to the living entity to attempt to find happiness in the material world. But it's like searching for water in a desert. It's basically non-existent. However, there's an illusion of happiness. So this is like a mirage. We may see in the distance, oh, just if I can just go a little bit further, if I can just achieve this or do that or whatever it might be, then I'll be happy. But the reality is, it's just an illusion of happiness. We never actually get there until we leave the desert. Meanwhile, our friend is saying that the Lord, who is in the heart as the super soul and who manifests externally as the spiritual master, who's a non-different representative of the Lord, being a servant of the Lord, he's carrying the message of the Lord, reminding us to take shelter of the Lord. They're saying you should just leave the desert, get out of the desert. What are you trying to do here? And they give us a path. But if we insist on going our own way, then we remain lost. But if we follow the path of the previous teachers, the Mahajanas, the great souls, then we can easily find our way out of the material world, out of this desert-like condition. And Krishna promises in the Bhagavad Gita that if we simply turn toward him and worship him, then he personally will guide us. Prabhupada quotes this verse from Bhagavad Gita, Tesham satati yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mam upayanti te. To those who are constantly devoted and worship me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. Now this, Hare Krishna. This may not be like a some big thunderclap in the sky, and then the voice of God comes down saying, you should do this. It doesn't always happen like that. When Krishna says, I give the intelligence by which they can come to me, he's referring to Shastra. He's already given us this whole Srimad-Bhagavatam, which is full of so many ways we can worship him. He's giving us the association devotees, realized souls in our local area, who can encourage us, who can give us good counsel, and ultimately he connects us with the spiritual master. He puts into our life, manifests as a representative of himself, the spiritual master, who can give more nuanced personal guidance. So in this way, Krishna is the dearest friend of the living entity. And so in this story, this allegory, Puranjani was met by this queen. Puranjani, the queen, was met by this Brahmana who wanted to pacify her, because she's lamenting, and nobody likes seeing a lady who's crying, especially Krishna. Text 52. Brahmana uvacha katham kashyasiko vayam shayano yasya shochasi janasi kim sakayam nam yena gre vichachartaha. The Brahmana inquired as follows, who are you? Whose wife or daughter are you? Who is the man lying here? It appears you are lamenting for this dead body. Don't you recognize me? I am your eternal friend. You may remember that many times in the past, you have consulted me. So the living entity often will turn towards the Supreme Lord. We see many people, Hare Krishna, we see many people at different points in their life have like what they would call a spiritual awakening. This often happens in times of great distress or like a reality check. Sometimes it's actually the opposite. We get a lot of good fortune, like we win the lottery, or maybe we have to get our dream job, but then we still don't feel happy. We still don't feel satisfied, and that causes us to question our course in life. And people have, different types of spiritual awakening, and they maybe pray for some time, or they turn to the scriptures for a little while. But then very, very quickly they forget again, because it really takes a lot of good fortune and also determination to give up the deep-rooted attachment we have to material existence. It's not so easy. So a very, very fortunate person recognizes that this human life is extremely valuable. It's a very precious opportunity. And he makes the best use of this opportunity by associating with other serious devotees, so that he can make, or she can make, very quick spiritual advancement. So here the Brahmana, which is Krishna, has assumed the form of the Brahmana, the Paramatma has assumed the form of his Brahmana friend, asks these questions: who are you? Whose daughter are you? Who's this man lying here? So we should contemplate these questions, because everything we do in life is based on a certain sense of identity. I think I'm such and such person in such and such type of body, and so I have so many desires about how to find happiness with this body. Desires are directly connected with the type of body that we have. If I have a dog body, then my desires are to run fast and catch a ball and chase squirrels. I haven't chased squirrels in years, at least, maybe when I was like 3 or 4 or 5 years old. But dogs love chasing squirrels, but I don't have that desire to chase squirrels. Similarly, birds love to fly high in the sky, and then they love to, sing their songs and so many things. So whatever body we have, then our desires manifest accordingly. But we should remember that actually I'm not this body. I'm not this body. Srila Prabhupada hammered down on this point because it's really such an important thing to remember at all times. We should remind ourselves to help us get out of bed in the morning. Deva Manaprabhu was just making this point the other day, that if we just remind ourselves, I'm not this body, it's easier to get out of bed in the morning. It's easier to resist the urges of the mind and senses demanding this type of sense gratification, or this type of sense gratification, or this type of sense gratification, whatever it might be, licit or illicit. Sense gratification is never favorable for spiritual life unless it's spiritualized, like smelling incense that's been offered to the Lord, or honoring prasadam, that's the remnants of Krishna, that have been food that's been offered to Krishna. So whatever our mind is demanding, we can simply say, I'm not this body. I know that you think we're going to get happiness by doing this, but I'm sorry, I'm not this body. It's not going to work. Let's do something else. So, Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. Here we go. Text 53. we're going a little bit quickly. I advise everyone, if they wish to go over these purports on your own, you can go to database.io. That's database.io. Or you can get a Srimad-Bhagavatam set from your local Hare Krishna temple or preaching center. And so we're in Canto 4, Chapter 28, texts 51 going on. We covered 51 and 52, and now 53. Prabhupada goes a little bit more in depth into the principle of Guru Tattva, the relationship between the Guru and disciple, and how the Lord manifests as a Guru to guide a living entity. Text 53. The Brahmana continued, "My dear friend, even though you cannot immediately recognize me, can't you remember that in the past you had a very intimate friend? Unfortunately, you gave up my company and accepted a position as enjoyer of this material world." Prabhupada quotes this verse in the beginning of his purport from Bhagavad Gita, "Ichchadvesha samutena bandhamohena bharata sarvabhutani samoham sargayanti parantapa." O scion of Bharata, O conqueror of the foe, all living entities are born into delusion, overcome by the qualities of desire and hate. Prabhupada says, this is an explanation of how a living entity falls down into this material world. So at the beginning of every manifestation of the universe, the Lord injects the living entities into the material nature, known as pradhan, that agitates material nature, and first it manifests Mahatattva, which is Brahma. Brahma is personified intelligence, and Brahma then, utilizing the raw ingredients provided him by the Lord and also the blueprint given him by the Lord, he creates the specific planetary systems and generates the living entities and so on. Each living entity is impelled to pursue happiness according to his previous samskars and his mental impressions from previous lives, and the specific fate that awaits him in this life is the direct outcome of his previous activities or his karma. So karma is without beginning, and every living entity has his own particular karma that he's been struggling with and adjusting and working on since time immemorial. And so this verse is describing that that before the manifestation of each universe, the living entity is with Vishnu in the causal ocean, and then when the universe is manifested, then they are injected into the material nature.
Did you say karma is eternal?
Without beginning, anadi. It's called anadi. It's eternal in one direction. It's not eternal in both directions.
Wow.
Yeah. It's eternal in one direction, but it can come to an end. That's actually the nature of ignorance. Ignorance is anadi. Ignorance means, like, in this lifetime, we can just, because it's impossible to find perfect analogies for anything, because that's what an analogy is. It's another thing that's used to help understand the desired object. So it's never going to be perfect, but at least we can try to understand the principle of anadi, that in this lifetime, I don't know what is the Spanish word for elevator. In this lifetime, I've never learned that. My ignorance of the word elevator in Spanish is without beginning. Now, what is the Spanish word for elevator? Do you know it?
I'm trying to remember. Ascensor.
Ascensor. There you go. Now my ignorance has come to an end. You see? So that which is without beginning can come to an end. It's always been there. My ignorance has always been there. Like darkness. As soon as you turn on the light, the darkness goes away. So, like a cave. Let's say there's a cave, and it's always been dark in the cave. Of course, it's not always been dark. But the point is, anyway, you get the point.
Yeah, it's difficult to grasp the concept of that. Being eternal in itself.
Yes.
Is one way or the other is.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Eternality is because we're trying to understand eternality from the standpoint of time, which we experience, we think, in the terms of past, present, and future in this world. But in reality, time is eternal. That's all we ever experience is the eternal present. But our conditioning and our material consciousness and our identity and so on, this transformation of the body from childhood to middle age to old age, it gives this impression of a progressive kind of past, present, and future. But that's just the material world operates in that way. Real spiritual reality, which is reality, is sat, is eternal. So we have to step outside of our material framework in order to actually appreciate these principles. And even it's difficult also because there's the language barrier. These are Sanskrit terms, and we have our habit of thinking in English or Spanish or whatever our mother tongue might be. And so it takes some time for the concepts to fully crystallize. All right. Prabhupada writes, by misusing his independence, the living entity falls down from the service of the Lord and takes a position in the material world as an enjoyer. That is to say, the living entity takes his position within a material body. And this happens at every creation of the universe. Every time the universe is created and destroyed, created and destroyed, created and destroyed, the living entity is again injected, again injected, again injected. It's a meta, it's the meta process of the individual birth and death. That the living entity is injected into the womb of some animal or human being and then takes birth. Similarly, the living entity at the beginning of every universe is injected into the material nature and undergoes his karmic allotment, his prison sentence, and then at the end he's reabsorbed back into Mahavishnu. And then again, sent out. Again, reabsorbed. Again, sent out in Bhagavad Gita chapter 8. So we're breaking the cycle. This is Krishna consciousness, is breaking this cycle of suffering and saying no more to Maya and going to Krishna. Text 54. My dear gentle friend, both you and I are exactly like two swans. We live together in the same heart, which is just like the Manasa lake. Although we have been living together for many thousands of years, we are still far away from our original home. So ultimately, everything is an expansion of Radha and Krishna and Sri Vrindavan Dham. That is the original source from which all expands. Janmadyasya yatha in the Bhagavatam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Janmadyasya yatonvayarita tascharte shabhignyasvarat Tene Brahma Hridaya Arikavaye Mukhyanti Yatsuraya Tejo Varimidam Yata Vinimeyo Yatra Trisargo Mrisha Namna Svena Sadani Rastakuhakam Satyam Param Dhimahi. That the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the absolute truth, is the source from which all things emanate. So everything emanates from Krishna. But those of us who are in the material world, we have been associating with Krishna in the form of Paramatma. That's what he's saying here. We've been living together for many thousands of years. The Paramatma has been the constant friend and companion of the soul since time immemorial, Anadi. And we have forgotten, we have lost, we are in ignorance of our spiritual nature. Prabhupada writes, the original home of the living entity in the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the spiritual world. In the spiritual world, the Lord and the living entities live together very peacefully. Since the living entities remain engaged in the service of the Lord, they share a blissful life in the spiritual world. However, when the living entity wants to enjoy himself, he falls down into the material world. Even while he is in that position, the Lord remains with him as the super soul, his intimate friend. This is our condition. We're in a fallen condition. Fallen just means in ignorance. We are in ignorance. We are in the muck. But actually, as we're going to hear in the next verses, the real identity of the living entity is spiritual. Text 55. My dear friend, you are now my very same friend. Since you left me, you have become more and more materialistic, and not seeing me, you have been traveling in different forms throughout this material world, which was created by some woman. It's a little bit of like a humorous phrasing that it's allegorical. It's trying to explain who is the woman represent. Some woman created this world. Maya Devi, Prakriti, Krishna's external potency. She's manifested it, and she's done so under his supervision. Krishna says, Maya Yakshena Prakriti Suyate Sacharam, that this is going on, this material world is going on under my supervision. I have my notes on my phone here. And so for the next few verses, we'll just read them, and then we'll hear about the general points Prabhupada is making in these reports. Some of them are quite short. Text 56. In that city, the material body, there are 5 gardens, 9 gates, 1 protector, 3 apartments, 6 families, 5 stores, 5 material elements, and 1 woman who is the lord of the house. And now we're hearing another analogy that the material body is like a city that has gardens, gates, and so on. We've already heard a lot of the descriptions of what these different things represent. My dear friend, the 5 gardens are the 5 text 57. My dear friend, the 5 gardens are the 5 objects of sense enjoyment. The protector is the life air, which passes through the 9 gates. The 3 apartments are the chief ingredients, fire, water, and earth. The 6 families are the aggregate tool of the mind and 5 senses. Text 58. The 5 stores are the 5 working sensory organs. They transact their business through the combined forces of the 5 elements, which are eternal. Behind all this activity is the soul. The soul is a person and an enjoyer in reality. However, because he is now hidden within the city of the body, he is devoid of knowledge. So this is the foundation of our spiritual practice, and our spiritual, our whole theology actually rests on the distinction between matter and spirit. That the conscious being is not of matter, is not a product of matter, is not associated with matter directly, but is simply like imprisoned within a cage of matter, and that is the body. But consciousness itself is non-material, anti-material. Until we recognize that and accept that, we can't have a spiritual life, we cannot cultivate higher levels of consciousness because we think that this temporary body and this single lifetime is all we have. So there's no scope for any spiritual progress, whether gradual or rapid, practically. There's no real progress can begin until we accept this point that I am not this body. Text 59. My dear friend, when you enter such a body along with the woman of material desires, you become overly absorbed in sense enjoyment. Because of this, you have forgotten your spiritual life. Due to your material conception, you are placed in various miserable conditions. Prabhupada in the previous purport quoted this verse, leading into quoting a verse from Bhagavad Gita, leading into this text that we're reading now. He quoted from Bhagavad Gita 13:20. Oh, sorry, I was thinking of a different verse. Anyway, we'll read this one. Prakritim purusham chaiva vidyanadi ubhavapi vikaram chabunam chaiva vidhi prakriti sambhavan. Material nature and living entity should be understood to be beginningless. Their transformations and the modes of matter are products of material nature. And then a couple verses later, Krishna says, Purusha prakriti stohi bhunte bhunte. Let me look that up. I think it's bhunte prakriti jan gunan. Purusha prakriti stohi bhunte prakriti jan gunan. Karanam guna sangosyad sadasa yoni janmasu. I think that's it. Let's check. This is from the 13th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, text 22. Yeah, bhunte prakriti jan gunan. Living entity situated in the body, the material body, composed of Lord's external energy, attempts to enjoy the three gunas born of the material nature. And impelled by his association with this material nature, these gunas, he takes birth in auspicious or inauspicious forms of life. We shouldn't take for granted that we have this human form of life, and so my next life I'll be a human being too. I can just pick up where I left off. That may not be the case. Even for Jad Bharat, who was, King Bharat, before he became Jad Bharat, he was extremely elevated, and yet he had to take birth as an animal. So we shouldn't take it for granted that we'll take a human birth. We should be very careful to make the full use, take full advantage of this human form of life. Text 60, and this will be the last text we do today, and I'll finish the chapter tomorrow. Actually, you are not the, we'll finish it tomorrow. Actually, you are not the daughter of Vidarbha, text 60. You are not the daughter of Vidarbha, nor is this man Malayadhvaja, your well-wishing husband, nor were you the actual husband of Puranjani. You were simply captivated in this body of 9 gates. The Puranjana, so we're hearing about Puranjana's life as a woman named by Vidarbhi. Puranjani, earlier in the class I was referring to Puranjana in his female form as Puranjani, but that was his wife in a previous lifetime. But anyway, this Brahmin friend who is the super soul is saying, you are not the daughter of this person. Imagine if you go up to somebody and you say, hi, what's your name? And they say, hi, I'm Jack. You're not Jack. You're not Jack. You're a spirit soul. It's a little funny, but with friends we can speak like this. The Brahmana is the friend of the living end of Vidarbhi, and she's accepted him as her friend. And so we should have the courage to give straight talk, real talk to our friends. That what are you doing? You're not meant for this. There's this nice Vedic, it's a nice verse. Let's see if we can find it here. Here we go. Utishtita jagrata prapya vaganibhodata. Arise, O living entity, sleeping in the lap of Maya. Arise, awake. Prapya vaganibhodata. Approach, this is saying, approach great personalities and learn. Take full advantage of this human form of life. Take full advantage of this opportunity that we have. We should not take it for granted. Prabhupada writes on this point of not really being the daughter of our parents and the husband of our wives and wives of our husbands and so on. Prabhupada writes, as water passes down a river, many straws and grasses are carried from the shore. These straws and grasses come together in the river's current, but when the waves toss this way and that, they are separated and carried somewhere else. Similarly, the innumerable living entities within the material world are being carried by the waves of material nature. Sometimes the waves bring them together and they form friendships and relate to one another on a bodily basis of family, community, or nationality. Eventually, they are thrown out of association by the waves of material nature. This process has been going on since the creation of material nature. Hare Krishna. So the point is, we don't want to take shelter of our family relations, of our connection to any political group or social group. We don't want to take shelter of our opinions, of our material qualities like duty, fame, age, intelligence. We have no shelter. We have no valuable asset other than our relationship with Krishna. And it just so happens that everyone has that relationship with Krishna. So we're all on an equal playing field. Everyone actually is equal in the sense that everyone has equal opportunity to approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead and worship Him and experience bliss, real bliss that lasts. So that's all we'll discuss for today. Tomorrow we'll pick up with text 61. Hare Krishna. Any comments or questions?
About Purandini. So the husband is in the allegory is considered to be the spiritual master.
Yeah.
But there's no way to connect that at the time. Keep passing away.
What do you mean?
I mean, it's just, there's no such a moment, I guess, where the spiritual master will cease the relationship with the disciple.
Yeah. So the allegory, let's see what it says here. Nor is this man Malaya Dvaja, your well-wishing husband. So ultimately, the spiritual master is a representative of Krishna. Krishna is the original spiritual master. And so we may have an eternal relation with the jiva, who is the person who is serving in the capacity of spiritual master. We may. And certainly many disciples specifically desire for that, to have an eternal relationship. But but it's going to be different for everyone. The spiritual master, by the grace of Krishna, is able to take on many different types of roles according to the specific needs of the individual disciples who he is serving. So that will be revealed. What is the nature of our relationship with the spiritual master in the spiritual world? As we uncover more of our actual spiritual identity, all of that will become clearer. Like when fog is cleared, then you can see the landscape. So our spiritual identity and our spiritual relations are like this landscape that will become more and more visible as the fog of anarthas are dispersed. Is that satisfactory?
Yeah,
You can ask.
and then it's
questions.
just it seems like not everything is exactly very
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the allegory. Yeah, that's exactly right. That an allegory always will have certain holes or flaws, things that don't perfectly line up. Because, like we were saying before, that's the nature of an allegory. It's taking one thing and using certain aspects of it to help us understand another thing. But if we could directly understand the original thing, that would be the best. Like if an Indian has never tasted pizza, and you say, well, it's like paneer and tomato chutney on a chapati. And you say, okay, I think I understand, but I'll have to taste the pizza to really know what is pizza, Oh, and with some sabji in there. It's paneer with tomato chutney in a chapati, but it's flat. It's all flat. You eat it flat, and there's some sabji in there too. Okay, I think I see what you're saying, but I'll have to taste it. I'll have to try it. So certainly we can try to give analogies and explanations and all these things, but ultimately people have to come to the platform of tasting spiritual life. There's no alternative.
okay. I have a comment on this on the fact that the Parama in the form of Brahmana is approaching running over here, and that this is a situation that happens when because she or he was at the point of she has accepted an spiritual master, and because of that one can have the chance of because otherwise if there's a way that one can have such a connection with Parman without having
A spiritual
a
master.
spiritual master.
Yeah. Well, it's nice that you asked this question. That how is it that one gets the opportunity to have the Lord come to him? In his commentary on this verse, Vishnu Thakur says, I was just reading it last night, says that the Lord took the form of a Brahmana because he does not personally appear, and actually Prabhupada mentions this in his commentary also, he does not personally appear to anyone and everyone. He only personally will manifest to those who have prema for him in reciprocation with their pure love. So we can hope for that. But in the meantime, we should have the good brain substance to recognize that the Lord is already appearing to us in so many ways. He's appearing to us in the form of the Bhagavatam, in the form of the Holy Name, in the form of the spiritual master, and in the form of the different devotees. That the Lord is perhaps not personally appearing, but he is sending them as his messengers into our lives. So there were many, many people who their first encounter with bhakti was when they met Srila Prabhupada. And many people rejected him. They rejected him. A more recent example is that last night, our good friends Siddha Hari Prabhu and Nagara Kirtan Prabhu, they did this debate. So here's 500 people. There were 500 people watching that debate at one point on YouTube. Plus there were the two people doing the debate, plus there was the, what do you call him? Moderator. So Krishna appeared to all those people in the form of his devotees. He's sending his devotees. Hey, snap out of your delusion that God doesn't exist. Wake up. The Puranas are they have all of the knowledge that you could want right there in one Srimad-Bhagavatam, 18 volumes. All the knowledge you could want is right there. No. We have to stick to our laboratories and our, painfully prolonged process of experimental hypothesizing and tabulating and annotating and reporting and peer reviewing and publishing and cheating too. Cheating's going on. It's not only in religious circles that people cheat and lie and steal. It happens all the way up to the top of the academic circles too. Hare Krishna. So Krishna is sending his representatives all over the world. All over the world. There's so many stories. I just heard a story of one friend. She went to India to write. She went to Rishikesh. And she had no, she was writing and then she had to keep moving from one hotel to another hotel to another hotel to another hotel because she kept, there was like a wedding going on and people doing music and honking their car horns until late at night. And then the next hotel, there was like a political rally outside. So finally she went to this hotel and she found that there were like devotees right there nearby. And then one devotee out of the blue said, hey, do you want to come with me to Vrindavan? I have an extra ticket to Vrindavan. And so she went to Vrindavan, But she went to Rishikesh having no intention of going to Vrindavan, but then the Lord sent some of his devotees to recruit her and take her to Vrindavan. Similarly, another friend of mine was in New York and he really wanted some sushi. And so he kind of, normally devotees don't eat at restaurants. But he really just wanted sushi. So he took off his tilak and put on normal clothes and then went to the restaurant. It was vegetarian sushi. And he sat down and then one of the people there came up to him and said, right as he's about to eat, they said, Haribo. Because they saw his kanti mala, his necklace, So don't think you can escape from Krishna and the devotees. They're everywhere. They're going to find you. So we have to deliberately ignore them. We have to deliberately ignore Krishna in order to stay in the material world. It's deliberate, willful ignorance of Krishna. Willful. So we don't want to do that. We have to snap out of it. Give it up. Just like a bad dog. You just hit him on the head with a stick. Say, stop! Stop it! Cut it out! We have to be firm like that with our mind. Our mind is like an untrained dog. Hey! Sit down. Stop it. Check your japa. Wake up. Cut it out. Because we're so much habituated to willful ignorance of Krishna. So that's like this situation. Fortunately, Vaidharvi recognized this is my friend. This is my friend giving me good counsel. So when the Paramatma is giving us good counsel from within or from without, we should take it. Hare Krishna. I'll end there. I'm over time, but we're kind of a small group anyway, so hopefully nobody's too upset with me.
We started late too.
Yeah, I started late too. So tomorrow I'll give the class and I'll be here on time. Right. Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai, Gaura Bhaktivinoda ki jai.